Gotta get my notes. It's great to be here with everyone today. As Gene mentioned, my name is Eric Nigh, and I'm big on figuring out how these things work. Yes, okay. So, as she mentioned, I'm from Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I'm going to talk about, I'm a second-year master's degree student in International Studies, Global Area Studies program. I'm going to talk about Iraq and how U.S. development policy has been run in Iraq up to now. So a little bit of background about myself. Gene already said some things, but just to sort of expand on that, I first went over to the Middle East in '99 as part of I graduated Central High School in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Go Indians. Anyway, so I don't know the mascot for Sheridan. So I went to found myself in the Middle East, in Jordan, Sudan. We did a camel trek across the Sudanese desert for a while. Eventually, when things opened up in Iraq, I entered into Iraq. I called my dad up, who had some money, and I was penniless. I said, "Can I borrow a few bucks?" And so he wired me some money. We bought 2 cars. This was in May of 2003. We went to the Zarqa Free Market in Jordan and bought 2 cars, me and my buddy, and we just took off into the sunset, across the Iraqi border, through Fallujah, up through Samarra, into Mosul, and then west to Sinjar, where the genocide happened recently. You might recall. And actually, my best friends who I went with at the time were Yazidis, who were grossly affected by that by ISIS's occupation of that area. So I lived in Iraq, in Baghdad, for 12 years. Married an Iraqi woman named Tanya, beautiful, made me a better man. We had 3 kids, 3 girls, who all attended school in Baghdad. I was living in the community. I speak Arabic very fluently. So I'd get up in the morning, make my coffee, get in the car, turn on the radio, put my kids in the car seats, drive them to school, drop them off, say hi to the guards at the checkpoints, and then go to work. And then I'd come back. And I was running, as Gene mentioned, USAID programs. So I know some things about Iraq, and I was puzzled and wanted to figure out why we haven't done a better job. And if you recall, and Ambassador Grappo did mention some of this, why we went into Iraq in the first place, largely related to events of the times, having things to do with terrorism and weapons of mass destruction. Our answer was democracy. We wanted to take democracy to Iraq. As Ambassador Grappo also mentioned, it wasn't our initial plan to be so invested in the democratization of Iraq, but we ended up doing that and sort of stuck with it. Unfortunately, the way things turned out, as you see on the screen, wasn't so good. Hundreds of thousands of lives lost, lots of American soldiers lost. Democracy turned into something that our founding fathers feared, something called the tyranny of the majority. We learned this yesterday in the We the People session at the Sheridan High School, which essentially is one sect or group takes advantage of there being the majority to oppress the minority in the country. And as a result, we had the disenfranchisement of Sunni Arabs in Iraq and the establishment of the Islamic Caliphate as a part of the Islamic State. So it's safe to say that our original goal of going in to supposedly fight terrorism, what we actually did was we spawned terrorism, okay? So many people have offered up explanations as to why we didn't succeed in Iraq. Lots of different ideas as to why, and none of those ideas really have produced a dramatic change in our policy. So what I decided to do is do what I know best and go to the people of Iraq. This is me in the Euphrates River with my buddy near Babylon, the ruins of ancient ruins of Babylon, and talk to the Iraqi people about what they think we did wrong in Iraq and give them a voice. So I went to various places in the country. I started in Baghdad, and by the way, I was sanctioned by the University of Wyoming to do this and funded by the Wallop Fund and the University of Wyoming to do this, which was a risk for the university to do, but taking into account the background and the value of this research, they did that, and that's a great thing to the university's credit. So I started here in Baghdad, where I'm based out of, where we still have a rented home, my family and I. I spent some time in Karbala, which is a Shia area, and as you can see on the map, the yellow areas are predominantly Shia. The green area is predominantly Sunni, and then you have, the red area is predominantly Sunni, and the green area is up north, predominantly Kurdish. And so I spent some time here down in the south. This is near Fallujah, and the retaking of Fallujah was going on while I was there. So all the refugees coming out of that were amassing here. I spent some time on the ISIS front up here in this Sunni area in a place called Daybaka, and then in Kurdistan in a couple places. And so I got some different views of different people that had different things to say. And I just want to note that I talked to Sunnis, Shias, and of course you know that, as Gary pointed out, Ambassador Grappo, that there's a sort of a Sunni-Shia sectarian struggle going on. And so this gentleman here represents a very notorious sort of Iranian-funded Shia militia, and I spoke to his main spokesperson. And then this gentleman here was responsible, in big part, one of the responsible actors for the Sunni Awakening back in 2007. So lots of different interesting people, different places, and so forth. So what do Iraqis think? Iraqis think that, number one, they all had to say, and I talked to about 70 people, by the way, of the different walks of life again, and they had things to say like, at first, everyone would express their gratitude, that they were grateful that the United States had saved them from the dictatorship of Saddam Hussein. But then they had a lot of things to say about what they thought we should be doing better, or we could have done better, which I asked them for, and they gave to me very willingly and in volumes. And so all of that sort of adds up to, though, that they think that we have abandoned them. And they don't understand exactly why we did what we did and left things the way we did. So this is kind of reflected in some of the things that these are some statistics of some studies that were actually done that I actually found more Iraqis, greater percentage of Iraqis that I interviewed also had to say the same things, though. They think that the United States actually supports ISIS. I had a lot of Iraqis tell me stories about how they've either seen with their eyes when they were fighting on the fronts or heard from very close relatives who were fighting on the fronts that the U.S. would airdrop supplies to ISIS. And I just couldn't understand how in the world they thought that, but they did. 40% think that we actively sought to destabilize things in Iraq. You have here an example of an official institution that we spent lots of money training, that police in Basra who are marching over American and Israeli flags in protest and disgust of what they think that the United States has done to their country. So what did we do wrong? I mean, it's not that from our perspective, we actually set out to make things worse in Iraq. So here's some things that they had to say. So they said that, number one, our development agenda focused on the wrong things. As Ambassador Grappo said, Iraq lacked the institutions to support democracy. So we went to work right away establishing those institutions. Unfortunately, a lot of, after, hindsight's 20/20, a lot of studies have been done, and a lot of people have now sort of put some insight into this, and it's not necessarily establishing the institution. It's not necessarily the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. You have to make sure that they play baseball to begin with. You see what I'm saying? So the Iraqi people have had their lives organized in such a way and have certain values, some of values which we share, like the importance of family, the importance of tradition. But there's some other interesting things, particular to their culture, and particular the years and decades of dictatorship that they've come out of living in, that will not support their easy transition into democracy. And so some things need to be done a little bit differently. Sectarianism. We were not prepared for the Sunni-Shia sectarian divide. And in fact, when we disbanded the army, we unwittingly supported sectarianism because of the large majority of Sunni leaders that were pushed out. And then when the new army was recreated, the Sunnis they boycotted the new army, and so most of the new security apparatus became Shia. And there's another thing too, and you can tell sort of by the story where I'm going on this, is that, and this is something I think that's a nuance that we miss. And unfortunately, because of the way the U.S. State Department and our political system is designed to go after any time a U.S. diplomat or someone who represents the United States is harmed, we actually build walls. We start building walls, and we isolate ourselves from the populations of these countries, particularly where it's most critical in post-conflict countries, where we're trying to actively gain the narrative. What I mean by that is tell the story of why we are there. We all know in this room, and some of you probably sacrificed blood and tears and money through our taxes to go and help this country get established, not just out of altruism, but because we believe it's also in our national security to have a stable world and a stable Middle East. So some of these institutions that Ambassador Grappo mentioned. So instead of engaging with people, what we do is we withdraw. And if you say, and there was one time when the Consul General of Basra engaged with some people in Basra that went viral on social media because people want to know that America is there to stand with them. The response of the U.S. diplomatic representatives in Baghdad I spoke to at the time said, you know, that was risky, and I don't think we'll do that again. But they made incredible ground by reaching out to people in the face of opposing stories about why we were there. So, unfortunately, when we don't step up and engage with people and we don't provide counter narratives, we don't come out on the news and say, no, we're actually not dropping supplies to ISIS. We're on your side. And we're here, and it's in Arabic. It's not to the U.S. media. It's in Arabic, and it's something they can understand. And it's in ways that they can understand. I go and stand with those soldiers who are fallen in those hospitals, and I visit them as a representative of the U.S. government. And they see that I am really standing with them. They'll, of course, be able to say, no, that's hogwash. They're not dropping those supplies. And even if I thought I saw it, it's not really what it's happening. Instead, they're filling in the blanks, or Iran, through their funding of these militias, is telling our story. Iran is telling our story by us neglecting to tell the story. So what can be done about this? Possibly, you know, I heard Ambassador Grappo talking about this during the break a little bit. Possibly pull the fighting factions apart. Exercise federalism, which was part of the original design of the Iraqi Constitution. If we just go back to sort of our end game here, like what do we want to accomplish in Iraq? We want to see, right now, we want to see an end to terrorism. We want to return to stability. And I think that we have to ask ourselves as the United States government, and this needs to come from the people too, what's the best way to do that? Is the best way to do that by isolating ourselves and allow others to control the narrative, by misappropriating our hard-spent tax-earned dollars, or is it simply just engaging with the people? Thank you very much. I would like to thank the Malcolm Wallop Fund for the Conversations on Democracy and the various other people that funded me, and welcome my colleague David Dimmick to come up and give his presentation.